She's ready.
She's ready. Here we are.
We're ready.
We're ready. We're live. Welcome.
We are alive. As long as I've known you, you've been alive. How is that going for you?
That's good.
Great.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Meet Your Species podcast. My name is Heath, and we have the lovely Andi today. Andi, I've known you, how has it been, like 8 years? Yeah. I feel like it's been quite a many.
Is it going on 9? Yeah, it's going on 9.
Many a moon. And you've just been one of the consecutively, how do I describe it? You are consistently gracious, hilarious, and warm. And these are not terms that I give lightly.
Sponsored by Andi. Thank you so much for generous donation. No,
but seriously, because I distinctly remember one moment. It was a Christmas party, and you.
I already know what it is.
Because these were days when I was smoking pot. This was before the yoga, and we had an awesome, this was one of the greatest moments of friend groups that I've had. It was awesome. Not this moment, but just that period was really great.
Oh, so much belonging.
It was just lovely. So, Andi gave me you gave me a Christmas card, and I read it, and because the handwriting was so beautiful, I mean, it really was exquisite, but I just didn't read the name. I just somehow, in my state at that moment, assumed it was by our friend Chris Bagwell, who's a designer. And I don't know why. I was like, Chris, I love this card. He's like, I didn't write it. I was like, oh, Andi, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
No, but the way you responded, you were like, I'm so honored that you thought Chris wrote that. That's how you handled it. It was
context, Chris went to a very lovely design school that I could not afford. So to think I could belong in such phenomenal company, wow, that's just, what a legend.
But yeah, no, these are good.
The names of people are making me miss these people. I'm like, I started a text thread with this person, and it must have been last year. And by that I mean probably the last week of last year, which it is now 2 weeks since then. But man, the weeks sometimes feel very long. It's sad because that time period where we all felt that great sense of connection, it feels so short in my mind's eye because it was so fun. But it was really, if I probably tallied it, it was a few years. It's at least a couple seasons of Friends. We had it. I mean,
the best seasons.
The number, I think our characters on the whole were far better than, I will pose that to the internet. Sorry, other white people, my Friends was better than your Friends.
Well, what to do?
I know. It was fine too. Smelly cat. I get it. I don't know. Is that in there?
Well, you gotta understand, Shravani is still, when I met her, that was only 5 years ago. Friends was still big in her mind's eye. Because in India, that's still a thing. And she asked me, she'll be like, remember the one with Joey? And I'm like, no, because that was the 90s when I watched it.
I'll watch it to feel close. I never could watch it. It was in my funnel of not allowed to watches because of people having relations, which is weird because I could watch Seinfeld. But anyway, I think it was just one of those kinds of things where it was watch what I want to watch, but get that girl with good hair away from me. So I have been wanting to watch it for a very long time. It's actually been something that I felt like people connect using analogies from there. Mm-hmm. And all I have is the one where Jennifer Aniston kissed the recruiter. That's not good.
That's the one analogy you have?
The one with the recruiter kiss. Is that what the name of the episode is? I don't know. I know Family Matters too well, where I'm just that episode where Steve benevolently gave his jacket to somebody on Christmas and Laura decided to give him a chance. That's not something anybody is ever Also, I made that up. So it's a good reason why nobody relates. Half of it, I'm it must have been a Stefan episode. Did you watch Family Matters?
I didn't.
What? Oh, so I'm just babbling. It's fine. Did you watch The Fresh Prince?
Yeah.
I couldn't watch that either. You got all the shows. No, there were swearing and there was an evolution poster in one of their rooms.
Oh, that'll do it, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll give more context on why this is a problem for Andi.
Yeah.
So, we'll kind of get into it a little bit. These podcasts, I really like to give people the context of why you are Andi, why you are the way you are. So take us into just like a snapshot, paint a picture, if you will, of
me?
your upbringing, your childhood, like what that meant for you and why that made you the way you are.
Well, I think I'm thinking much more in my golden years that I don't, no one really knows the nature-nurture balance, but I will say that I was born extra. I came out just how I am in terms of personality. I wish I could be like, oh, that really shaped me. But I was always just like this. So I'm the eldest of 4. So my next sibling came when I was like 20 months old. So I kind of had to start changing diapers around that time, which is
when you were
pretty
20
tricky.
months?
I think I did. My parent was bragging about it recently, and I was like, Mom, surely you don't want to tell people that you had me changing diapers at 3. And she's like, it was so cool, you could do it. I'm like, oh, was I in diapers? I don't know. But yeah, so doing a lot of diaper changing. We are part of a family that was fundamentalist Christian, and we were homeschooled. And how else would I say it? We were in upstate New York until I was 10, turning 11, and then we came to Georgia, and it was a real culture shock. I entered public school. I was not a thin child, which caused a lot of trouble for me over the years, mostly because my classmates, when I was homeschooled, I considered celebrities. I was like, oh, these people on Entertainment Tonight, my classmates! And just felt close to them, but it was always like, ugh, when is my stylist coming in? Like, I just kind of lived like that. So then when you get into public school, people really let you know, like, I flat ironed my hair this morning, and my dad has me in cheerleading. It's just like, okay. I like that. Good dance moves, whatever. So no, I didn't. I ended up being a fine arts dweeb and really thriving in that scenario, but really struggling in public school, not academically, did pretty well, but was not liked. And went to college, stopped being religious. What else happened? Oh, I lost 100 pounds at the end of high school, which was revelatory, not always in the way that I would like it to be. And then what else has happened? I think that's upbringing. Yeah. And then I'm a person in college that is not faithful. So that was tricky. An unfaithful college student.
So what, like, for somebody who was never like homeschooled, for example, that's an experience, right?
Oh, yeah.
What is that like? Because I think a lot of people have preconceptions, and I want to know what's your take on it.
So homeschooling is like quarantine America. You go to sleep and you wake up and you do the same thing that you do every day. And you have a much higher threshold for slacking off. Like our work was, my mom would be like, well, I'm going to finish lunch. Go do 2 pages of your workbook. So I'd go do my math workbook. A lot of it was a lot of self-starting. So, oh, interesting.
Okay. So, sorry guys, we had a visitor at the door. But
I wish it was a guest, like on Pee-wee or Mr. Rogers. Would have been good. It's Chris Bagwell with his handwriting.
Something like that. Where were we?
We were talking about homeschooling and what the experience is like.
Okay.
We did have really bad field trips to like the grocery store. I'd be like, we're going to learn about consumer shopping at the grocery store.
But did they have anything like, I know some homeschool groups do like sports and things like this, some sort of grouping with other kids.
Once every 2 weeks on Friday, we would go to a church, and it was called group lessons. Group lessons! where they tried to socialize you with the other strange children that were also homeschooled. So you got a lot of like children named Eleanor with like hair down to the backs of their thighs, and like what else would I say? We were religiously homeschooled, so we had a lot of other religious homeschoolers. So it was interesting. We did crafts. I didn't learn to sew. It was offered, but I as a person, I would say that I'm a creature of leisure. If it's something for someone, I'll put a lot of effort into it. But if it's just something to do, why am I doing it? So I would embarrass people with my cross stitch, whatever people do. I don't know. What else did we do there? Patriotic shows about patriotism. So
like what? How's that go?
You sing a lot of like, "You're a grand old flag.
Oh.
We don't accept you if you're not straight." Like a lot of like really weird, bad, upsetting. It wasn't, then you don't know it's bad. You're just like, why am I riding a covered wagon across this rented pulpit at this random sanctuary? But yeah,
good times.
It was times. I didn't hate it. And a lot of nativity plays. So gotta let your freak flag fly at the nativity play. So yeah, that was about it. I'm sure that like the only sports were like aggressively playing on the playground, and I'm physically weak for a person, so like a lot of athletic activity really passed me by. The most athletic thing that happened was we were playing with seat belts, which is a dumb game, but we were just letting them go.
Just
so to hear the noise, that is what homeschoolers are like. And I got smashed in the face with a seatbelt, and I ended up bleeding down my face like a car accident happened. And that was the most eventful thing that ever happened at group lessons.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of the time, really all we did was watch PBS Kids, which was nice because as a child, I probably averaged about 15 hours of TV watching a day. So it was
Oh, that's significant.
It's significant. And then you would just go to your Bob Jones textbook. That was the person who made them, out of Alabama. And we didn't have science. And
none?
No.
Zero. Oh, how's that work?
Just things about Jesus and his love.
But there's like some sort of standards, right, for homeschooling?
You have to go take the Iowa test, and I did fine on the Iowa test. And it was really basic stuff that I saw on PBS Kids. It was like, oh, Jupiter, Mars. Like, it was like real basic Miss Frizzle type stuff. And I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I watched the show and I retained it, and then I had to entertain my siblings with the show, so obviously I had to lord that information over them. You don't know the order of the planets. What's the nomenclature for a sloth? Like things like that were. Turns out in real life you really don't use the varieties of Australian mammals.
Not so much.
I would know things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, that is what it was like. It's I guess it's hard to explain. You just do a couple pages. Your mom would read with you for like half an hour, and just hope the test turned out all right. But it did. It was weird. Not to be a libertarian over here, but like it was okay.
So what would you find are the biggest differences, or maybe more in like a pro-con of homeschool versus when you shifted over to public school?
I don't like public school at all, so that's easy.
Oh, okay.
The pro, I'll start with public school because it has less pros for me. Mm-hmm. Pros were socializing with diverse peers. It's very useful. My best friend in 7th grade, Ashma, was Muslim, and like you could just meet people that you would never meet while they were beating you with the Bible sword or whatever they were doing on the playground at group lessons. The teachers had different that happened. I think it was at his house though. Anyway, so shout out kid, I don't remember your name. I hope you grew up to not be doing what I think you were on January 8th. Anywhoozle, yeah, the teachers, they didn't care about me, but they were more different skill sets, you know. The best thing in public school 100% was the extracurricular activities. To be able to do theater was just saved my life. So I have to say that that was very valuable. It could also be competitive, it could also be sad, but it gave me a place to belong and a place to be strange. And homeschooling, it's just like, you can't even be in it if you're not strange. You know, you're already choosing something so divergent from the herd. So then I would say the pros to homeschooling is that you learn at your own pace. You can learn more if you want. And as a person who always wanted to learn more, even if it was just about the Pink Ranger's life, like I always wanted, had that thirst for knowledge. And I also liked that you got to be a kid when you were homeschooled. So the things you were interested in, or playing outside with your friends, it was never like let me wait for this. The rigor of orders and the amount of discipline to survive the day, you never felt that. Like I never had I would stutter. I would long for my friends to come home from school so I could play with them. But I never had a day where I was like, what am I doing? And I will say in public school, you have so many of those moments where you're just watching the clock or just trying to figure how you're going to make the next hour of time pass. Mm-hmm. Reminds me a lot more of like a penitentiary kind of philosophy for children. Yeah, it's not making children, socializing them to be asocial for the interest of doing busy work. It might tie directly into employment expectations outside of school, but I don't think it's healthy for anyone. So
for humans.
Yeah, for humans.
Fair enough.
Sorry, species, if that's what you like.
And so as far as those like schooling years, mm-hmm. Because you showed me a video a little while back where this girl is interviewing just strangers on the street and asking questions, and so I decided to incorporate this a little bit. So I'm going to test it on you.
Love it.
What would you say would be some of the biggest challenges? You were just one, or like, what are the challenges you really faced that you had to overcome?
In school specifically?
It doesn't have to be in school, but in those years, like maybe 18 or younger.
In the school years.
Sorry, technical issue. Anyways, the question is, what are the challenges you faced in your like younger years? Like the things that you had to overcome, that kind of, I don't know.
I'll say homeschooling years, it was just the pining to be like everyone else, to know what everyone else felt like. Because things like riding the school bus, oh my gosh, we wanted to ride the school bus. We thought about it all the time. Kids would be out there, you know, in the 5 feet of snow, and I should have just felt bad for them, but instead I was like, oh, but they get to ride the bus. That's ridiculous.
Because you're in New York, right?
Yeah.
So you guys got snow.
Western New York, like Great Lakes, super snow. Yeah, we got a lot of snow. We had 7 feet of snow on the side of the house in 1993. I had time to measure it. I was homeschooled. What were the hardest things? Yeah, that'd probably be it. The hardest things in public school.
It doesn't have to be about school. It can just be like generally in life.
Just in life. I would say in life, the hardest thing in public school would be that it was during adolescence. And so where I would have been developing and like branching out in a social circle, I was really an outsider. And more than that, I started seeing signs for depression and for mental health issues. So it was probably just, specifically during my later school years, it was being fat. I mean, being fat was just destroyed me. And it wasn't probably I could do a lot of things. I was like Chris Farley when he goes on ice skates. I was very capable. I was talented. I was above average in many different ways. I remember in 7th grade, I still had my homeschooling confidence.
Your homeschooling confidence.
I needed it. I drew the cover of the literary magazine. I contributed to it. I starred in the school play and had straight A's and got put into the gifted program. I thought I was walking on sunshine. I was like, how could life get better? Here I am, ready to give what I've got to the world. I knew I was a star. And then the next year rolled around, and just people would fake ask me out. And when I got into high school, I couldn't get roles in high school because of my appearance. They would want me to use my accent to train the person who was physically acceptable. That was terrible. Oh. And so, yeah, that was really, really lonely. And then, too, a lot of things that come with depression, like a lack of self-care and things of that nature were showing up. I was getting blamed for it. Like, there was this fund for underprivileged kids that would go around, and people would raise money for the Holiday Hope Fund. And the school called me because they were like, we noticed that she looks really run down and her clothing is poor. So would you all need some help this season? And my parents were offended, but I didn't want to ask. I never wanted to draw attention to myself. And at the same time, my parents, because of the external influences, started seeing me as secular. I was banned to live in the basement of my parents' house. I wasn't allowed to interact with my family. So a lot of those things were very hard. And then, so I would say then, after that, some of the difficult things were after I lost weight. My body didn't look like a teenager's, because when you lose a great deal of weight, you have a great deal of loose skin. And then my boyfriend was gay, and I didn't know. So I just felt like, here I am, I lost 100 pounds, but I am unlovable to my boyfriend. And the conflicts with my family escalated. So it was a tricky time. I would not... Anytime people are like, oh, but those high school years are right, I'm always like, what? Why? They're like, oh, if I could go back and throw one more pigskin. I'm like, I wish you could right now. Go back. So yeah, that was sad. It was sad even when it was better, because as I lost weight, people would make eye contact with me. They would talk to me. They were friendly with me. They wanted to be my friend. All of a sudden, people started, I wouldn't call it intruding, because I welcome people. I love connecting with people, but there was so much of a demand on my time by other people, where all my years before had been so lonely. It was just really, jarring. And then at that point, the only person I felt close to was said boyfriend, because I felt a great deal of trust in that person. So on a positive note, I still have I still have my best lady friend from high school and that old boyfriend. I just texting him today. He's still my best friend. So it's worth it in the long run. The trauma bonding is worth it. It was just very hard. And also there were other dynamics. My said high school sweetheart is Black, so we were told by the theater person when we both got the lead roles in theater, we couldn't do the kiss that was in the play because they didn't want to start something. In 2003, apparently, an interracial kiss was just...
Too soon.
I was like, wow, he's Sidney Poitier? I was like, wow, okay. And I was banking on that, you know? He was holding out on me, so I was like, I need this kiss, please, please. Not to mention the outrage of racial injustice. It was also personally, I mean, I guess racial injustice is personally jarring, and it was damning, but it was also hard as somebody who's just like, this was gonna be my first kiss. So yeah, it was not the simplest time, but I think it was such an important time. I think it was really eye-opening, because through things like, I'm not fat phobic, but I think through weight loss, I saw the notion that when you set your heart on everything being okay when something else comes down the line, that's not true. Like, you have to live in the current moment constantly. And these achievements, it's always a be careful what you wish for. Sorry, microphone. But yeah, it's always a be careful what you wish for. Because the same thing with possessions. Some people are like, oh, when you hit it rich, you will be you with more money and different problems. That doesn't mean that some problems won't get better. Like, for me, I could wear clothes that I could buy at a store. And my mobility was a lot simpler. But yeah, in terms of emotionally, where I was just like, I'm going to fall in love and then I'm going to star in the Moulin Rouge. Like, none of it. Because I had realistic expectations then too.
So what would you say is your... do you have any like moments you're really proud of? That you would
from that same time period, or just in life? Oh,
well, I mean, you can actually let's just open up to
life
up until now. What are your most proud moments?
Oh wow! I guess my proudest moments at this point are being with my grandparents in Germany, where they were originally from. My grandfather needed someone to push his wheelchair, and it was the last year he would be alive, and I got to see that with him. That was special. Seeing my sister, so my parents did not want me to be close to my family. I was like disowned. But my sister had a baby this year, and I have seen this baby every week of her life as she's grown, and the baby looks like she did when I was a little girl. So it's like reliving being 3 years old, but better because you know what's going on. And so that's the proud part of that, I guess, would be just that getting to be close to someone during all stages of their life. Like, I don't know, I guess some parents must feel that when they're like, oh, my baby is, but I feel that with my siblings. And then what else is the proud moment?
What about a moment, or doesn't have to be just one moment, but an event or a situation or something which really triggered growth in you?
Oh, let's see. I think, I know this is going to sound unkind, but breaking up with someone really triggered growth in me.
How's that?
I would say the best thing I ever did was leave my fiance when I was young, because
You might have to give some context. What's this?
Let's bring everybody up to date. Gay boyfriend in college. I was on my own. I was 17 when I started college, and I didn't have any money, so I was like dumpster diving and things. I just had my housing paid for with my student loan. And a couple years in, I met some guy. He had a crush on a girl I was in theater with, who was thin. Not to hate on thin people, but kind of difficult when it's not your MO. I had regained a little bit of weight. But she was thin. Like, she never had that problem at all. But also, she was really regular thin. I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean this in when one has a lot of personality, it is always interesting when somebody is telling someone about I don't know, everyone has different goals. But when you meet someone, you're like, oh, your life has been kind of just coasting. Okay. It's weird when somebody is obsessed with their connection with somebody who's just like, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know where the connection could have formed. You know, you're like, oh, you saw this person and you liked them, and now you're obsessed with marrying them. But why? So yeah, so there wasn't a lot of explanation. Point of that being, he was trying to get with this girl, and in the process, he took a liking to me as a consolation. And I was with that person for 3 years. It was the first person who ever showed interest in me. And to get out of that relationship, my parents told me the reason I went to college was to find my husband, and that was him.
Like they told you that before college or like at this?
Oh, at this point, after, and they knew that it was a tumultuous relationship and there were a lot of very difficult things going on inside of the relationship. But they told me that, of course, the whole reason that I would go to school was to find my husband, not to get a degree in something that I was very, very invested in and that I loved and that I excelled in. It wasn't to see all of the different things. It was just for that. So for me to say, oh, because that was another thing. From the time you're born, when you're in that fundamentalist kind of environment, your life is about creating the next family. Like you are all about, almost to the point where it's like you're born into codependence. It's like, find a spouse and populate the earth for Jesus. That is it. That's your MO.
Your purpose.
That's your purpose. And for me I was the first person in my family to break up with the first person that they were in a serious relationship with. So the generation ahead of me, they all married them, went their merry way. So yeah, that's a weird thing to say, but I was about to have surgery to remove the skin from my struggles as a kid. And he was very attached to the idea of me as like a trophy wife. And I decided I didn't want to be with him anymore. And so after having a lot of conversations, I decided to strike out on my own and figure out whatever the cost it was, however many jobs I had to work, I was going to be my own human. And then that happened. And I know that sounds sort of bittersweet because I don't mean it as a sad moment for that person, but for me, it just meant that I would get to enjoy my own company, which is not something I anticipated ever enjoying. So,
you know, the way you're describing this, it's reminded me. There's like I think it's a TED Talk where someone who's a lesbian speaks about her experience coming out of the closet, and how actually lots of people are in lots of closets, whether it's sexual or not, and so. I'm curious how you would describe this situation of, well, first maybe give a little bit more context on what it means to be to grow up in like a fundamentalist kind of family, and then what it's like to actually come out of that. And because you're kind of on your own when you're doing this, right?
Oh yeah. So you don't have anybody.
Yeah. So.
Coming out of the fundamentalist closet. Well, first of all, I wish I could have put that on the list, but like the apostasy was really, really painful.
What is that?
Apostasy is when you come out of religion. I went to school wanting to be a minister. I wanted to get a physical therapy degree, and I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to get people to think and invest in the poor and the underserved. And so my goal when I went to college was, I'm going to spend all the time in the library I need. My parents don't love me, fine. I have God. I'm going to invest in proving beyond a shadow of a doubt there's a God. And that just opened the door to more questions, which opened the door to skepticism, which, I mean, I had post-traumatic stress over it. I was it was horrible. I was wanting to walk on train tracks. I was in bed for 3 weeks, and I would wake up, I would have the violent nightmares. And I was, when I say, that was my first true, because I had been depressed for a long time, but it was a mild depression. That was by far my first. Major depression hits a ceiling. Like, we were like, there's no further we can go. You have nothing moving up here, sister. You want to die. So it was the first time I was like, oh my. I would sit there. I was like, I know it's weird to pray, but if a plane could crash into this building and kill me, I'd love it. If a car could accidentally hit me and I die quickly, awesome. So that was really, really bad. And then when I came out of the closet, it was horrible. It was terrible. It was, I was met with full consternation, pulled by my hair and dropped outside of the house. It was nasty, which is another reason I was really clingy to that relationship, because I thought, if I'm out of this relationship, as sordid as it is, I am back in that. Like, I have nowhere to go. So yeah, it was, I'm so thankful for what I have. The gifts of leaving have been a much bigger heart than I started with in the first place. I thought it was as big as it could get, but I was still shaped by the expectations of the world. And the world is so much bigger, and the world is beautiful now because it's not all scary stuff that can land you in hell. It's just beautiful. So that is a gift. But I don't often talk about coming out of religion because I don't recommend it. I mean, it was just so horrifying. And it was not the only saddest time of my life, but it was by far one of the bleakest times. And I was working at the time. I had a $6 an hour, it might have been less, internship, and I showed up just looking like I looked shell-shocked, like I was completely losing myself. And the people in the offices at school was just like, I could never show up anywhere looking like that, and we're just disgusted by me as if my failing mental health were me. So that was really, it wasn't a good time. I'm glad that it's over, but it also it gave me some really great friends because the people who have to live at the fringes really need each other. So in terms of best friends, I got some of the absolute best friends out of the situation. And I had to break the previous friendships, as I mentioned. We still love I spoke to both my high school best friends today over text, but I had to cut the cords for a while. And that was really important. So yeah, that closet, and I think the people need to, I hope that this is something that makes people think about what it takes to come out of the closet in general too, because I know that a lot of times people like to celebrate it as like a nice past memento, but the process of can just be so crushing for people. Not that people should bring children into this world with expectation, but I almost think it happens whether or not people consciously do it. So yeah, that's all.
That's all.
Heath, do you want to answer any questions? Do you want to tell me that answer for you? What closet do you think you've had to walk out of?
Oh, well, I guess for me, my childhood was a lot of being alone. So there was really nothing that people were forcing me into. Like even with religion, I chose to join the Catholic Church when I was 6 because I was bored and they had a candle and I wanted to burn that candle. You only got to burn it once a year, but I really wanted to burn that candle. I still never got to burn it, but I had to go through 6 years of church school. So, and I mean, even with that, they had me continue going to church school for 6 years because to try and instill that sense of like, once you commit to something, at least see it through. So I did it all the way through the what's called confirmation.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you get confirmed? Yeah.
I did. I was actually the only one in the family who did, even though my sisters were going through it.
Can you still take the body of Christ if you wanted to at Mass?
So jealous. I don't know if there's like papers that prove whether you can or not. I guess if I just go up, they'll give it. I don't know how it works.
You were confirmed. I'm not allowed. My family's Catholic, so I'm very interested in the non-fundamentalist family, the extended family. Everyone's Catholic. So jealous. I was like, remember? They're like, don't let her have it. I was like,
I want to. They don't taste good. They're really awful. But
it's like a participation thing. You know, you're like, I want my nasty foam.
Well, like for me, I really, how do I put it? Once I realized that this wasn't for me, which was almost immediately, I didn't really. I had. They said I had. When I say they, I mean like teachers and I went to a psychiatrist, and they said I had ADHD and all this as a kid. So I was like, at the church, I would we would have to go up in like the top balcony pews because I would be sliding around back and forth. I would play a game with my friend who was deaf, and like, I don't know how that worked for him, but we would take the Bible out of the little pew thing and fold one page and stick it back, and he had to try and find that page, and we were back and forth. Like all these things, my mom would be so frustrated because she'd be like, what were they talking about? And I'd be able to say like the gist of what the sermon was about because I was just able to pay attention and do all the other things.
Yeah.
But
you needed the other things to pay attention.
I guess. What I realized later is it's not that I had a deficit of attention. It's that I just didn't give a shit about whatever most people were talking about. So, like, I actually have an incredibly high ability to focus in on something very specifically because it's something I want to pay attention to, and a very high threshold for how much of what you want me to do you have to really push hard before I'm going to actually participate in it if I just don't want to do it. So that translated to me being about 14, and we're in this small town, everybody knows each other town, little chocolate shop before Easter. And there's a chocolate thing of hands like this. And very loudly, this place is packed. It's Easter, everyone's getting their chocolate. And I'm just like, who wants clapping hands? Like, why? And this cop was staying there to like keep the peace, I guess. He just looks over and says, and my mom's like, 6 years of church school. Praying hands. I'm like, okay, but I don't want to eat hands. Like, why?
That's so weird. Well, you were trying to eat the body of Christ, so you really...
Just the hands.
Just the hands now.
Is it the healing hands? I don't know. But, so as far as like closets to come out of, I think... I didn't have like a belief system so much to come out of because I never really had anyone try and force me to believe anything. What I did have to come out of that was actually more challenging, not more challenging than that, but just the more challenging thing for me was just realizing that because like my best friend was deaf, so there was a certain level of many beautiful things I learned from him that I couldn't get from other people, like his ability to pay attention to things visually, and just because he had to, he couldn't hear. And he was more athletic than me, so it really pushed me to be a lot of things. But at a young age, when I met him in 3rd grade, he was just behind comprehension-wise in certain aspects, like reading level and stuff. Because they didn't even acknowledge that he was deaf until a certain grade, because they just, it's hard to test, you know?
Wow, yeah.
Although I guess... How would you not figure it out? But I don't know. I wasn't
Did
there.
you sign Heath?
No, because I met him in 3rd grade, and by 4th grade, he got something called a cochlear implant.
Yeah, I know what that is.
So he was actually able to hear probably better than me at that point after they got it all dialed in. So there was really no need. I learned a few things, like this was pain. So he'd be like, a pain in the ass. But it wasn't at a point where I was like signing or anything.
To do anything.
I just remember like this is J and I think this is K.
We had to sign in church. This is Lord.
Oh. Nice.
Jesus is the holes in his hands.
What?
Yeah. How more? See, more with the hands. More with the hands.
But
I would say at least like Chocolate Jesus Hands acknowledges that he was like from Nazareth and not like
he was brown.
He was brown.
It wasn't white chocolate.
It's not white chocolate, but like that's not enough, especially since sugar is ethically troublesome. It's just
so many.
It's fine. Yeah, let's go into the Catholic Church for all the chocolate. Let's not get
into the chocolate or sugar problems.
No.
No, but so to answer the question, for me, the difficult thing was like there's a certain distance because of the comprehension levels. Not that I was like understanding more than him, it was just different. Like we weren't able to connect at certain levels because of that. And in a similar way, my mother growing up had an accident that created this... it's called RSD. It basically means that the nerve cluster in like her left side was irritated in a way that triggered pain when there wasn't anything going on. So like a sleeve, she had to cut the sleeves off of all of her shirts and stuff because if the sleeve was on there, it would feel like searing daggers going on. The wind, raindrops, like anything.
Is that neuropathic pain? Is that also referred to that? Because I have a friend who has that also, where it's just like the explanation is just the nerve endings.
Just I don't really know so much about it. Probably I should know more. But for me,
a kid. You don't have
the experience translated to mom was on very heavy pain medication out of necessity because most people, I think a majority of them commit suicide that have this disorder. It's that painful. Yeah. Some people are like neck down, like severe. So I can't imagine being in that kind of pain all the time. But anyway, I remember being small and seeing her on the couch and being like, okay, I'm pretty sure I was like some small degree of dyslexic at that time because I had to like think, which is the left side? I have to sit on that side, like the opposite side, so I don't bump her arm and make her cry. Like these are the kind of things I was going in. So while they were able to really focus in on things, and I really think that in some way I was a degree of dyslexic and got myself out of that by like learning how to really focus. But she was on the heavy pain medication, so there were just some aspects where for a 14-year span, because of that pain medication, you're not fully there. Yeah. She's an amazing woman who did a lot, but still, you're on pain medication. Yeah. And then other aspects, like my parents split up when I was 3, so my dad was physically distant. So there's a lot of distance. Yeah. So for me, the most difficult thing was learning how to actually be fully connected with people, because I always had a certain distance. Like that thing you said when someone like fake
asked me out. Yeah.
I think I did that not on purpose, not because I was trying to be rude to somebody, but because I didn't understand what the concept of being in a relationship was. Like there weren't any of those around me all the time. Yeah. I didn't have that sort of social understanding. Yeah. So I think for me that's the stepping out, like realizing like, okay, it's fine that, you know, whatever happened in childhood, but now you know it's a thing, so you need to not do that because that's kind of shitty to people.
This person thinks you're on a date right now. Yeah. You're like, oh, we're just hanging out?
No, not even that. Like, I didn't know how to be close. Yeah. Like, one person described it, who I was in a relationship with much later, and she said, it's like your heart is not really open. You're like, I'm able to be very good with strangers and connect to them, but a deeper relationship, not many people in my younger years had shown me what that was like. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know how to do that for other people. I didn't really know that was a thing. And I just thought being alone was normal. But it's a consequence.
Well, and I think, too, it's easy to think, my sister would hate me bringing this up, but my baby sister, that reminds me a lot of, I used to tease her. I'd be like, my little ice bitch. But my youngest sister was born when I was 5. And when she was a year old, my mother was taken into an asylum for being bipolar. And as a result, I have this personality. It's a lot. And it's all this engagement. Like, just like, if you don't engage, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do it for you, baby. I'm here. Got it. But my sister was 1. So she, as a person, is a lot of the things you're describing, because my mom started being medicated after that. And in medication, there was some level of distance, and also probably dealing with the stigma. Certainly it's not like have some, one in particular, well, some, but the person I'm thinking of has the pains that are not the same thing that your mom had, but has pains such that, you know, they can't interact anymore, or even just like proximity can. So I know that there are sometimes relationships where like there's physical distance and emotional distance. But for my mom, it was like she kind of just became, I don't want to say a robot, because I also enjoy a mood stabilizer. but something was different. So she was with us when we were younger. She was just wildly creative and engaged in a way that, like, my youngest sister has sort of she can be very disciplined, she can be very focused, different from the rest of us, but she also struggles with distance, because even the people she loves, she wants to do something to show them she loves them, but it's like you said, like with the heart, she's has no trouble with engaging strangers or being friendly in business, but when it comes to being really open and vulnerable, I think she really struggles. That's hard. It's hard that you went through that because too, it's something that sometimes our culture kind of idealizes. It's like, oh, of course, you're a one-man island. You don't need anyone. You make your own decisions. You are a true individual. And it's like...
self-made.
Yeah. Like, well, I would actually really like to feel closeness with others and belong. We're social animals. So it's funny. That sister and I actually get along. We're great. And part of it is because I have been forced from the family in different places. She never has to be because she's always a distant star. That's just how she is. The trauma and annoyance don't touch her. She can live with anyone. She can do anything. She's just there. She's her. So it doesn't affect her internally. We're like, I don't even have skin. I'm just like walking around like, oh, do you love me? I love you. Oh, it was nice to meet you, person who gave me my change. Like, they're like, oh my God. You just gave me that change so good. But yeah, so I think that's interesting in those like foundational relationships. How that too, and it's nice to hear that perspective because the grass always seems greener. You're like, oh, you're self-contained. You can make choices without feeling feelings for everyone in the room. But it's not always because it gets lonely all on your insides, you know?
Again.
Yeah.
What about your favorite moments? It could be like things with family or things since you've become an adult.
My adulthood.
Grown up.
Favorite moment. I'll probably say my first adult best friend who is still we're so close. Just being in the car with someone that you feel fully accepted by and just sitting in the passenger seat and everything's sucking, but you both hurting kind of like it's like a beautiful orchestra piece where like you're hurting with cello and she's bringing the brass and like together. It's just kind of like a symphony, even though it's horrible. Like you can go through really incredibly uncomfortable things with people that you love. And then I would say probably later on, I keep noticing, and I'm just aware of this. One of the greatest things in my life certainly is like my little family, my love, my relationship with my husband. That's been such a peace. It's like a lot of the things, the pathways were dug before we finally got to each other. So when we did, it was just so simple. But a lot of the really connecting with people has always been, I guess, it's as many of those marvelous connection moments, and then making people laugh. That would probably be my other favorite thing. Just if I can remember, okay, I'll do my grandmother grew up in Nazi Germany. She gave flowers to Hitler when she was 5, which isn't giving flowers to Hitler. It's throwing flowers at a politician when you're 5. You don't know what you're doing. But she is 4 foot. She's 4'9". She's very stern, and she is the light of my life. She's my hero. Like, she is the most dedicated, industrious, like, caring. I don't know. I don't have enough good words for her, but she's very traditional. So one day I realized that between like she, who's like just very like, Andrea, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You shouldn't have gone to school for film. You should go for finance. What's wrong with you? Between her and my mom, who's like, if Luna Lovegood grew up and bad things happened to her, just like, hey, how are you, baby? Great. Like, she is 100% just, like, she seems like a fried out hippie, but she never was. She was in the 80s. Like, she was not, so she didn't have her time. I love my mother, but the day that I realized that I could make both of them really laugh, I was like, I'm great. Like, I don't have to do anything else. Like, my life is great. I can crack up a stern, intense, traditional woman, and I can make my mother, who farmed her whole life. She's like 87 and still farming. I'm like, please learn to relax. Or my mother, who I don't know when the last time, like her doing domestic labor takes all of her everything. She's like, I washed the dishes today. I'm like,
you did it. So
I woke up at 2:30 and made myself a snack. But the fact that I can make both of those so vital to my existence people, but so, I mean, they're that's her daughter, but they're very opposite, that I could get both of them to laugh. That's probably my happiest moment.
why do you think humor became, because I've noticed this from the time I met you, like your ability to say the most awful situations and make it funny. Like, no matter what you're talking about, you can make it enjoyable. So why is that? Why has that become such a thing for you?
Humor is the only thing that is 100% protection for everyone in the room. Like, if you can crack a joke about the worst situation and everybody can laugh, you get a breath from that moment. So for me, my other two, so I took this test, and there were like all of these categories that you could be. It was 21 things. My one of my dear friends is a doctor of psychology, and she had me take it, so it made me feel like it was credible and not just like them being like, all right, Aries today. No offense if you're an Aries and if you're looking at your card. But so at the top, my top three are kindness, justice, and humor. And when I look at those other two, like, you cannot, if you're going to balance being nice and being obsessed with justice, you better have a sense of humor, because there's not a whole lot of kindness and justice. And if you're going to be a person who cares about justice, you better have a sense of humor. So I honestly think it happened really early, because when you're trying to herd three younger siblings that are just all feral and doing their own thing. And like, there's my two youngest siblings, including the one that was like a little distant star, saw that. This is why, all right, I'm going to do, this has to be at the camera. White people, I'm talking to you. Only you would do this. And sisters, I don't care. This was your whitest moment. See Tarzan once decide to move to the jungle and start climbing the doorways in every room of the house and eating with you, walking on all fours for months, eating with their hands, and then I would just walk in a room and one would be up in a doorway talking to the other one. And I'd be like, what? And I'm very afraid of monkeys. My mom actually did this experiment. This is a good story. My mom is one of those people who you're like, did she need a degree? Like, maybe she would have been better off just like being an associate manager at whatever the equivalent of Applebee's was in the 80s. Maybe the Ground Round. Why couldn't she just work? Linda, you should have stuck to the Ground Round. My mother decided when I was like, I had to be less than 20 months because my sister didn't exist. This is probably my first memory. It was really messed up. My mom got a gorilla costume, and I was waking up from my nap. How old was I might have been 12. And in comes this gorilla. And I'm just sitting there, and this gorilla is coming in. Ooh. What? And so I'm just like trying to, I'm so young, so I just start crying. I was like, ah, like just in anguish. Like, why is there a gorilla? She kept it up, even with me crying. And then finally she just says, my mom. I said, what the hell were you doing, Mom? She said, I wanted to know if society makes us afraid or if children were naturally afraid. I said, you what?
What does that mean?
She just wanted to see if children were naturally scared of gorillas or if society makes people scared of gorillas.
Like a sociology experiment?
Yes! On her infant, like her toddler. Oh, Linda. So yeah, and then they want to be in Tarzan, and they're all about like, look, here's a new photo of my new home. Like, it's just not. So yeah, you have to develop a sense of humor. It's too weird otherwise.
The best I have is that one time I think my dad was going, like, he hit the garage door button and then ran back and pretended like it was going to crash. I'm like, and I started crying in the car. That's the best I have.
That's still sad. That's still sad.
But I have nothing on the ground.
I just think some things in life are hilarious too, because like, okay, my mom's sad that she has bipolar or whatever, but she like tried to baptize police officers and was like doing it. Like, life is hilarious. You can always like to be like, what? I also think that this is not a. As a fat person, you have to do something. And a lot of people are like, it's unfair that not every fat person has to be funny. Let me tell you, being a fat, funny person is a lot better than not being a funny person. Like, it becomes a lot more palatable. Because then, I mean, there's nothing nicer than being able to laugh for me. And I love snacks. So if I like laughing more, at least up there with snacks, it's powerful.
At least feels good.
It feels good. And on a side note, a lot of women, when I'm semi-identified, in case you got an undergraduate degree too, I identify as non-binary, but I am semi-identified, so it's fine. As a girl, I am constantly, no offense to ladies, you know, I think you're the best. I just also don't always feel related because I grew up a fat. But anyway, because that's being a fat, you're not really a boy or a girl. You're just like a fat. They're like, whatever that is, hide your Halloween candy. Like, it's not, you don't get a gender assignment. They're just like, oh, they're like, there's a boy and there's a girl and uh-oh. Like, and so I was uh-oh. And so as uh-oh, one of the things that was nice is, because I'm a girl if people are trying to pick what I am, a lot of people think girls can't be funny. So if some jock jerk guy is like, cha-cha-cha, you can just be like, who are you? And then you ruin the room, and that guy's not so ha-cha-cha. Everybody's back to ground level. So it's a great way to take the piss out of really patriarchal people. And it didn't do me very well in women's studies classes. It's just not a lot of humor to be had. And it was, but yeah, and it's fine. There's good times to be serious. But yeah, that's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing. It's also, I always think that humor, so religion is whatever it is. Some people are pious, some things mean things to people. Humor is perfect religion because it takes everyone and makes them the same. You can tell people the hardest thing in the world in a joke and people will laugh. Because there's some part of their truth that's coming out. Done. And that's why too, like, you know, humor does different things for different people, like, and it must be presented to people differently for different situations. I think it's a religion to laugh. my best friend Hillary always said, when things are terrible, imagine a laugh track is about to pop up right after. And so
for a joke.
Yeah. We just said life with a laugh track. It really makes the bitter a lot sweeter. So it becomes wine.
Fair enough.
So yeah.
So let's jump to the now a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
The now. By that I mean, sometimes it's good in this podcast to just kind of look at what are the things that you notice in the world when you look around. Because I've come to see the world, there isn't like a world, there's just the individual people that you're surrounded by. Yeah. That's your world. Everything else is just kind of a story. So what are the people in your world like? What do you notice?
Oh. Well, some of the people I love, some of the things I love happening with the people in my world are people have very different values than their parents' generation. Some people are wanting to start families, or they have families, they're just adding new people. And a lot of the things that I did and didn't like, I don't like the way the food industry was growing up. I don't like a lot of the way that we were told to understand the people that were in our lives, or, you know, the different groups, you know, that had been expected. So like in terms of class, in terms of race, in terms of gender, a lot of that stuff is really, really dynamically shifting. And like, I love seeing a lot of changes too, where many of my siblings are actually like not eating animal products and are like planning their lives around a life that they think is more sustainable, not only for the planet, but especially for those animals. And that's so heartening to me. That's really special. So I wish that I had a more elaborate answer for the world. I like now, when I was younger, the world was so big, but I like now the world for me is how can I influence myself and who can I influence well? And that's really going great. I think too, the way that the world is changing because of something that's really sad. I mean, the pandemic is giving people a lot of opportunity to have things that are remote. And I think when things are remote, much like my thoughts about homeschool, I think people have more introspection time and they are able to find space for themselves. I know that's a privileged thought, 'cause surely some people have their clicks monitored and they have every task. There's a lot of surveillance, but I think that people are getting to develop their environment more. And you know, when you're in a more classic work setting, you have to figure out how you're going to eat, and you have to everything has to come with you. Instead, it's like people can be close to their values. That's really amazing. So
it's probably good we talk about the pandemic, because it's just a very large reality these days.
It's a very large reality.
So I've noticed, because I have some friends in different parts of the world, and I keep getting texts like, "What's going on? Are you okay? I'm a little concerned. Your country seems to be in the news a lot." So how have you experienced this pandemic?
Well, I think first, to speak to the world and news, I went on sites for other countries' mainstream news sources. It's all American headline news. So even in German, where I'm reading and I'm just translating it, it reads like what I'm seeing on Associated Press, which is very interesting. I think that the spotlight is on certain inalienable questions. Like we have all of the Constitution and its intentions, and we have our commitment to individuality and all of the various things that America has come to stand for. But when we see the number of people that have died and the number relative to who's died in other places, that's really important information. Because it's just so significant. So what do you think you've...
I mean, it's one thing whatever's said in the news, but for you personally, what have you learned and taken from this?
I have learned that my life needs to be a life that's had outside of... that social doesn't need media. I don't need a medium for being social. It doesn't feel good. So I was a person who overbooked myself to attempt to show support to others. I wanted to provide something that I struggled to feel myself. And in having to turn inside, in having to live inside, I had to really be honest with the things that were not ever going to match who and how I am as a person. For example, one would be working from home. My opportunities are average. There are a lot of nice things about that, but I am not a person who enjoys working for a company, and I want to do things that cause me to feel that kind of homeschool glee where I can focus and do as much as I want or not do as much as I want. And I want to spend FaceTime, like in-person FaceTime,
Actual
not
FaceTime.
on the phone. I need to spend
Maybe we can
that
call
with
that
people.
mask time.
Yeah, that's fake time, actually. But phony time. I need to make those spaces for people. And it might be an organizational challenge at first, but I've started doing things like that. Like, I am not on social media. I had a number of friends that were part of a social group that I just loved. And I've just started creating a newsletter once a month just so that we can keep seeding that social experience, because the scroll effect and the getting intimate news from one of your closest friends on Facebook, it's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. So that's been a big deal because I've used social media extensively. I used to think that it was my best tool for getting to my career and personal objectives. Mm. I'm thankful for what it provided until now, but I feel the same way with like an occupation. You can appreciate what something allows for your life, but you also have to kind of take stock and say, I don't really identify. I am lost in this. Mm.
So we're probably that first generation that had the like Facebook and all these like social medias, right? And now it's been what, 10 years? More than 10 years?
More. I think this year it's been 15.
So in 15 years, and you now said you're pretty much out of social media, right?
Yeah, I'm out of it.
So what have you taken away from this, like looking back? Because in a way, it's kind of a world that you get sucked into.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's on it, so you kind of have to be, or you're weird.
Yeah.
That's how it was.
I'm thankful for the convenience that it provided. It gave me a lot of people I shouldn't have been able to message at various times. I mean, it's weird to say, like, I have, with many people, conversations, even like the first time I ever got drunk, I have the message that I wrote to the people that got me drunk that's just a polite thank you, and because so just it's for archival purposes. Wow, what an amazing thing to have.
Like a time capsule.
It's a time capsule, and it's special to know what you thought whatever number of years ago. But what I'm finding is that quality is more novel, and the ability to be marketed to specific ways. I don't get to focus on people and friendship in a scroll the way that I do just sitting across from you, for example. Mm. I wouldn't get that detail about when you started feeling that disconnect and had to challenge yourself to really feel
never
close.
Gonna post that.
Yeah, that's never going to come up there. And then when I see people on the contrary who I feel such intense closeness sharing things to Facebook and not connecting to me. An example would be someone we both know from our past, which I guess isn't useful unless the FBI is looking for him. Brian Cloudis. Do you remember Brian Cloudis?
I don't think so.
So this is someone who was at Sing for Your Life. He was at the Capitol insurrection because he was pushed from the community for racist behavior, and now he was taking pictures with someone that he was taking pictures with. I don't know if you know the guy with the painted face with the horns, the shaman.
The Viking guy?
Yes, the QAnon shaman. And the person that shared that is the person that I met that person with But it's like the internet hears that, but I don't hear it. So I'm just having conversations. Like, it can be funny. You know, when you know something and you've shared an experience, there's a whole world of dialogue about it between the two of you. And then when you're sharing it with strangers, hoping they'll stop by and give you a like, that's so desolate. That's so desolate. And I've appreciated some really considerate. I think when I posted that I was engaged, it got like over 600 responses. That's so generous that people, for this moment in time, wanted to give me that kind of a little boost. But I would have much rather gotten, I don't know if I even got a phone call.
Oh, really?
No, not one.
But to be fair, you tend to post like after the fact.
Well, I've started doing that only because I notice social media and the way people take in things, it doesn't let me choose my feelings about something.
Okay.
So, for an example, a great example is getting married. Oh, I loved marrying my husband. I loved it. And I loved that the whole goal was that my grandmother could be there and it could be near where my grandfather was buried. But also, for a lot of people, the emphasis on my wedding, when a wedding is not an accomplishment, like, in my opinion, it's just giving people notice. It's just saying, this is already what it is. I'm so thankful. I know for some people it's a big celebration. I don't have $32,000 to spend on a wedding. Like, it was just a moment. And like many things, like you couldn't be there. I had one of my best friends who had been struggling with addiction, but was a huge part of my life. I have not seen in a long time and couldn't be there. So there's like major pieces that are gone. You're just doing what you're doing as best as you can in a moment. But to have people can like contact you to be like, congratulations on the best moment of your life. Get out. That to me is a lot like that weird you met your husband in college kind of thing. I don't want, and that's, I guess, another reason I left social media was my weight fluctuates. And over the last 4 years, it hasn't been my focus. And when it goes back to the way that I'm like usually comfortable, I don't want people to comment on it. And on social media, I noticed I tucked the wedding photos several photos deep in. So you have to know my life and care about me to get there. And the teacher that had the racist assessment of me and my high school sweetheart and told us we couldn't kiss reacted to my wedding photo. I haven't heard from this woman since, God, 2003, and I don't want to hear from this woman. But, yeah, just, it's nice in life that sometimes you randomly run into people and it can be awkward. And later it's funny, so that's good. But one thing is that being intentional, as humans, we're often intentional about who we see and who sees us. I have 2,500 people on my friends list. I'm not going to be intentional with that. I can't be intentional with that.
It's too much.
It's too much. And two, you date people during times in your life, and then they're going back and you see them like commenting on things, and you're hoping they're okay. Like, I hope that you also have your own. It's just a lot to be responsible for.
Do you think you can see a better, like, a way that it can blend with our lives in a more healthy, productive way?
I think maybe if social media were more like email and less like people putting up posters for their band. Because, an email is like, hey, I wanted to tell you this thing, or a text. Which is why I still like the Messenger app. I'm like, okay, great. Go ahead and send me something silly or something that you noticed for your day. But right now, nobody wants that. The minute somebody hands you a flyer for your band, what's that Mitch Hedberg joke where he's just like, "Oh yes, I'll throw this away for you." Like, my issue was I was using it like the Catcher in the Rye. Like I was like going through everything on Facebook and just loving as many things as I could because I was like, I do love this. You're great. You're great. You're great. And eventually I just stopped and I thought, this isn't an effective way to share how I feel for people or what I want for people. So it is still social media, but I think now the things that I'm interested in are like YouTube. People are weird on camera, but you can still be more of yourself than you could on a little post.
It's at least a person talking in real time and not just like a picture or something.
Also, a lot of the pictures, it's like I love photography because it can just capture fantasy. You know, you can take a fantastic world, but it's also, there's an element of like falsifying. Like there is that, and that's fine. It's fun. I mean, I've certainly tried to take pictures where I've been like, I love this on me, but that's not what that's not a conversation. That's a statement. Mm-hmm. And two, you know, they say how people on Facebook, it inflames feelings of depression. I don't have a lot of comparison just because I'm so strange. I don't I don't aim to be like anybody else, and I don't envy anybody else because I have no clue what their series of things are. But I still think that having seen people that I know that are competitive, the way that they use it, I don't think that it creates the quality of life that just being in your life would create.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I feel something that's far, like when you look at most social media, it's about posting something.
Yeah.
And I feel like that aspect itself is the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have something like Discord, or a lot of businesses use Slack or these kind of communication channels where you can organize things, control your notifications properly, and not have ads.
Yeah.
It's just a platform where, like, if I want to, it's like a forum, but in real time, we can actually talk
Are
to somebody.
Discord and Slack monetized in that way? I mean, I know Slack you pay for because we use it.
I'm not sure.
The company I work for uses it.
I'm not sure how Slack works because I haven't used it in 7 or 8 years. I'm sure it's completely different now. But
it's a lot like Discord.
Yeah, well, Discord, the way they monetize it is through the like Nitro boost, which just gives you more emojis and things like that.
That's all? That's the only way?
They might have other ones, but nothing that the user is paying for, and there's no feed to be given. So it's nice in that sense, and anybody can create a server that's like private or public or whatever you want.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't know. For me, like, and I assume it's pretty similar to Slack. Like, I have a friend who's a UX, you know, Millie. Yeah. So she said there's Slack groups specifically for designers. So she'll go in those and join them, and that gives her access to people like a forum would.
Wow.
Just people talking about a specific thing and helping each other.
Or like Reddit.
Exactly.
I know Reddit's gotten into some questionable territory just because people with big opinions tend to...
But see, Reddit, for me, it's less like a message. It's more like a board.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's too slow in that sense. It's useful to be able to go back for like certain things. Like, for example, if I'm trying to fix my car, I know I can go to a forum about this specific car and someone will have answered that. And that's great. But for social aspect, I feel like something like Discord where you have a messenger, it just removes the middleman and the problem, which is really the advertising and the feed.
Well, and too, that impetus to post, like the false sense of relevance as in, you know, by posting, that's so
and the
sad.
Likes and the like feedback from that.
Well, and two, you're right about that. Like Reddit is upvote territory, so people are trying to get the upvote.
But I'm okay with that for specific applications. Yeah. Like if you're trying to look for a solution and like it's a problem solution.
Like a best solution kind of thing, like Quora, but better. Cora emailing me all the time. Hey, have you ever thought about getting your shoes replaced in Texas?
These Cora emails I can't do.
Can't. I unsubscribe.
Get out of my...
And they're always like, oh, do you want to read more answers? You can sign up for no. Goodbye. I also love Discord. So Discord, my niece is 11 and lives with my parents, which causes a great deal of friction because I am not in great communication with my parents. And we have had such a great time using Discord. Like we have movie nights on Discord.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's just so special. And I think that the technology seems better to me. We've also been able to play, some friends have played, do you know what Jackbox games are? I think I tried to, yes. So that's been a huge, I think that people are looking to move more towards those things. People seem on the whole exhausted right now.
Yeah.
But
at least in that, you're basically having real-time interaction, like with a real person.
Well, you can turn on your camera or not. You can hear the voice.
Stream something, watch it together. Have the, like, we're sitting on the couch together even though we're however many miles apart.
Yes. And I actually, some of the beautiful gifts of last year were, at one point, it's really strange, my high school sweetheart, who was just out of a Broadway show and was like bored, my ex-boyfriend who used to be very conservative, and like a couple of other random people all were in Discord together just talking. And coming from like somebody who to me used to represent the epitome of toxic masculinity, talking to my wonderful gay high school sweetheart, and all of them were all talking about their different perspectives that they were coming from. It was just so the possibilities. And you know, he's in New York, one person was out of state, I think in Florida, so you can unite all of these different people regardless of distance, regardless of whether or not they would probably ever see each other unless they all stumbled into the same bar. And it's this intimate conversation. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And there's also options for like modifications with these little bots that you can create and stuff like that to make it very cool. But I have a question for you because you brought up with social media like the falseness, and I found through probably a whole bunch of different reasons in your life, your ability to detect falseness in somebody is quite acute.
Yeah, that's so funny that you say that. No, is there a question related to that, or is that just a statement?
Well, one thing is, it's a beautiful thing of you, but the question is, with that, what are the things that you, especially since your experience with being larger, being thinner, like having people treat you differently because of that?
Oh, yeah.
What are the things that you've learned from having this clarity, this ability to see this, and also being in different situations? What have you learned about people?
Oh. I think one of the things I learned about people is that they don't know themselves very often, and sometimes on purpose.
Like willful ignorance, or what?
I would say we all face so many pressures here in the West. The media is overrun by things that are rare seeming to be common. So you see people who look a way that is very biologically unusual, and it is presented as common so that people feel comfortable buying the thing that's being presented. So one thing that I notice is that on social media especially, and it is heartbreaking, people present themselves in the way they think they will be loved rather than being themselves. And for someone that really loves them, it can be heartbreaking. So I guess the thing I would say from being a number of different ways is appearance is in no way necessarily connected to your internal state. I think that the idea that it is funny. I'll even trick, like, I had a doctor's appointment last year and I put on lipstick before I went there, and he's like, "Oh, well, you look like you're doing great." I'm like, "Yeah," because I changed out of my pajamas. But it is something that it is in the medical industry. It's interpersonally. A lot of it is not intentional, but kind of like, rather than willful ignorance, I think that we are so conditioned that things feel essential to us a lot of times that aren't. And unfortunately, we inflict that on ourselves. Like, we think it's essential that people love us when we appear a way that they think is lovable. It's not true. People just, when someone really, really cares for and enjoys a person, their presentation on a platform is irrelevant. So that's actually been really meaningful to me as a married person, because as a married person, I have, since I decided to throw my focus entirely when I had a year full of a lot of people that I loved passed away, and I was also committing to working in an administrative job after trying to start my own brand for a long time, which was really, really hard. I became unrecognizable to myself very quickly just by not over monitoring myself. And the person that I married just loves me. Like, I was in the relationship I was in my engagement, everything was very, very, very appearance based. So it'd be like grabbing parts of your body and shaking it and saying, "What's wrong with this?" Or like, "When are you going to change?" Or, "You don't know how hard it is for me to love you." Like, things like this. So to see what it's like to be with somebody that loves you versus someone that loves the idea of you, why would you spend a second with the person? Why would you waste a second longer on the person in love with the idea of you? Just ridiculous. And even so, my high school sweetheart, we were talking and he was like, "Oh, do you think you had an eating disorder? Do you think you have an eating disorder?" He's never thought about my body or my weight or my anything. He doesn't care. So I don't know, from having those connections and realizing those connections are not, like, the people I love most might not like or love my post. That doesn't change how I feel about those people. The people that are responding don't care. It's another gauge of public taste, but it's not a gauge of how loved someone is. That's sad.
True.
So yeah.
What about what is something that you would really love for people to understand that you feel is missed by most people you come in contact with?
I want to think about that one for a little bit. Something that's missed. I would say the thing that I see missed, that I would love to see people see, is just the reality of others. Because I think that it so often becomes consuming to do what everyone is doing. And especially, as you get older, you have to work up the energy or the nerve to do a lot of things. But anytime there's an exchange with another person, there's a whole other person there. And maybe my favorite thing in my life, maybe even more than humor, has been just seeing people. Because when people are seen, they just, it warms people in a different way. And the nicest thing, the person I married also does, like, whoever the cashier is or whoever's at the door, like, makes sure to take a genuine moment with each of these people. And I wish that the world were more interested in those small exchanges, and the dignity of those small exchanges would be such a different world. That's all I'm thinking now. Watch me think later. I'll be like, rewind the tape. Eat kale. I don't know. Collard greens are great.
What about in terms of, we'll just kind of look a little bit more future-wise. What do you think needs the most focus? It's not really being addressed, not serious enough.
The food industry.
Yeah. Why is that?
The food industry is so heavily lobbied against in America that it has no party representation. There is no party that says, oh, we're going to change the way that food is produced or the way that the land is used. I think the way that animal agriculture is ravaging the planet and making very certain, very specific. Somebody said that if all of animal agriculture were stopped, there would be 50%, the climate crisis would shrink by 50. And somebody said, oh, that's not enough. 50%'s a lot. And for every single thing that had to die, that's a whole hell of a lot. For all of the reasons too, the really inconsiderate use of land that gets overexposed, the people that get sick that are so often, Black people, brown people, people of color, and the poor. I think that it would not only do a lot in terms of how people would feel, but I think that it would do a lot in terms of letting the planet breathe. I know it's an unpopular thing to say because, it's the notion that vegan thoughts are just as militarized and just as intense as any other group that's very rigid. But I think that anything that takes a tenderness to life on all levels and can be addressed with just changes to those things, it would make a huge difference.
I have a question about the future, but involving your Oma, right?
Yeah, Oma.
So, are there any lessons that you've learned from her? Like, for me, my grandfather grew up in a cattle ranch, and there's not many people that had that experience. So I learned a lot from him that I was able to apply to my life now, which has shocked people.
You literally had a grandpa cowboy?
Yeah, that's what she calls it. That's what Shop calls it. Cowboy grandpa.
Cowboy grandpa.
But everything you told me about
funny.
But everything you told me about your Oma is so beautiful, and it's probably at least 50 to 100% because of the way you impersonate her. But
I want to play a voicemail so you can hear this, just what she sounds like.
But I'm curious, are there things because not everyone really has strong older generations that have that older wisdom, a lot of that got lost. So is there anything you've learned from her or even your grandfather or other people from that generation which you feel are very applicable to either what we're going through now, or especially since you said she grew up in Hitler times? So is there anything like that you feel would be applicable that might be useful?
The funny thing is, my grandfather, Opa, the one who is now no longer on this planet, his spirit just remains, it's not a pretty topic, but his spirit is no longer with us. But in his memory, he was a man of very, very little means. He did not have much at all growing up, and he had a relationship with the land that was really different. And he told me that global warming was serious before anybody else was. He just noticed it, which is really kind of
when you say his relationship was different to the land, can you what's that?
Iterate on it? He spent time in the world. He spent time with trees and growing things, and he was a charming person, but he was almost best non-verbally because he caught things that were really significant in nature that I wouldn't even know to look for. And if another good example is he was very close with the wildlife. So during World War II, they really had a thing against the French because he had 2 gooses and they would fly down and sit on his shoulder and he would feed them. Yeah. But the French killed his gooses and ate them, the French army.
How rude.
And so he was very... But I don't know, I would say just of Opa and Oma both, because Oma, I'll do all of her adages in her accent. She'll just say, family first, charity starts at home. And I summarily reject that. I always have. But also how diligence can become art later on. She's the most generous person, and this is my mom's side of the family that Oma and Opa are on. On my dad's side of the family, they were politicians. They were people of some repute, and kind of like think of the Lannisters in Game of Thrones. Less incest, I hope. I don't know. I'm not in their business like that. I don't know. We'll study my facial features if anything starts to emerge. We'll know. That family tree was a little too straight up and down, but no.
If you're only still on social media, there's probably a quiz for it.
There probably is. I know I'm not one. I know I'm the one that drinks and knows things. Not because I drink, just because I'm teary and I've had a hard life. It's fine. I don't have a facial scar. That's interesting. Anyway, but my dad's side of the family, my Nana, I mean, was like it's kind of cool. She was like the first female mayor of her town, etc. But they lived to be seen, and they always had, but they died so poor. I don't know how to put that. Like, not even financially, but in terms of the relationships in their lives. Something about it was because they drank well and they lived opulently, and so there wasn't really much, I think, for their kids at the end of things. My grandparents were so, like, they're hobbits. Like, if you could think of anything, just think of the most pragmatic, down-to-earth...
Oh, this is Oma.
Oma and Opa. As the contrast, we're just always saving money, but always very, very, very consistent. The experience at their house when I was 2 was the same as when I was 30. It was just always the same. What are you doing? Do you want something to eat? You gonna take a nap? That was always to my mom. Her running around. What I would love to take from her is her generosity, because while she always was very, very diligently working, if something was wrong, she's right there. What do you need? They paid for the rest of my college degree. My parents pulled funds once I was radical, crazy, atheist Andrea coming to bring Beelzebub into our home. They didn't want to. All they had to do was co-sign my loans. They didn't want to. So my grandparents paid out of pocket.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of stuff I'll never forget. And my grandfather saw my attitude and had some hesitance, and she just said she picketed for me, and they had a very even relationship. I guess the thing that I take the most from my grandparents and from their era, which is a weird thing to say, my marriage looks very much like their marriage. I was very particular about that. Are
you going to be hobbits?
Oh, we're hobbits. I mean, we already kind of are hobbits. Live within your means. Like, work hard for the people that you love, but make the food at home. Like, all the values are really helpful at this stage of the world, because like now I don't want to make any animals. I have to make my food at home. I have to come up with new recipes. I want to feed my family the kind of things that come from my heart, that feel like they come from my heart. And because I have their ethic, I'm like, I got this. Great.
Bam.
Been waiting on this. So, you know, I'm making like giant vegan Thanksgivings and Christmas dinners and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's I would say her work ethic, they were social, which is very impressive because English is their second language, so they had to build a social circle from nothing. But they were social, they were engaged in the community, and I will say the thing that I love the most about them was they were so giving. So, and maybe some of it was nosiness from being in the country, but they were volunteer EMTs for 20 years after they retired.
Oh.
So they would just have the monitor on all the time when we were kids, and then they'd have to go with the squad and they'd go save people and put people in turn. Like they were doing these things.
That's kind of cool.
It's pretty cool. I mean, because from the war, they were just, nothing phases them. There's nothing other than my sister's attempts at rapping that really phase. Which is not, you know what? I think it is not. I would like to clarify. The reason that they tisk her rapping is not for it being to hip hop. It's because she's awful at it, and she had a real sense of intentional non-belonging to the family for a while. So that hurt their feelings, because they were like, "We tried to give you whatever you needed, but you don't like us because you want to Benz and you want to shoot someone." Like, you know, it all works out.
Poor Oma Opa.
Poor Oma Opa. Well, actually, when my sister was, that's a whole other podcast. But when my sister was in a particularly rebellious phase, I understand the rebellion, obviously, in that household, but she jumped out of her window to run away from my dad, and she cracked both of her ankles.
Oh.
And was jail crawling out of the yard. My grandmother came down and took care of her when she had to be on a medical bed in the middle of the kitchen to be taken care of. But she flew down in her 80s to do that. So that level of really going the extra mile for your family, I hope that I will be like that. But I also hope that I will be more I want to draw a larger net for what my family is. And I think not having children, I should be able to do that.
Oh, you don't want kids?
Oh, I'm never having kids now. I used to do it because I feared overpopulation, but at this point I think in the world, by the world I specifically mean the US, to be a creative person in the US, you have to treat your creativity like a kid. Because it takes resource, it takes money, it takes thought. And yeah, that's where I want to put it. I'm so thankful for the kids that will be in this world. And I live to be an auntie. It's the best. People are always like, "Can't you wait till you're a wife?" I'm like, "What about auntie?" Like, I want someone to drool all over me and then vomit milk. Like, I love being an auntie. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You'd like India then, because everybody's auntie.
I love that.
Auntie
I think that's the best. That's what I'm trying to do out here, and that's how it.
Spread the tradition.
Yeah. Well, my Oma and Opa were like that, so their friends were, Tanta and uncle. So I won't have any tantas, but
what in terms of the next generation?
Yeah.
What do you hope that we can accomplish for them? Because, I feel like every generation, there's at least two main goals. Leave the planet at least as good as you got it, if not a little better, and let the generation have at least one notch better off than you had it.
Yeah.
We probably failed with the first one. I don't think it's possible, even if we do everything, to get back to where it was when we were born.
Yeah.
We can at least set the foundation, right? So, but at least in terms of the next generation, is there any, I don't know, advice or things you feel like we could do as a community, or like, what's your thoughts on this?
Oh, the challenge is how steep it is.
Well, let's just look at it like, never mind what's possible, what's needed.
What's needed. The first thing, and this is just speaking as an American, I need to see the end of mass incarceration. Like, I can't live in a society where it doesn't matter what was manufactured, in what way, or ethical or blah. Like, you know, people say, oh, if things are made in the USA, it's you know that it wasn't made in a sweatshop. I don't know that, because we have the largest amount of humans incarcerated, and as a person who's been incarcerated, there's not a person I would wish that on. Even when people are laughing at their political adversaries being carried off to jail, I cringe inside myself thinking of what that means and what that feels like. So yeah, I would love to see that dramatically change. And then the other thing that I think would be really helpful is if we could model some of our policies after how some of the Scandinavian countries view just a basic livable wage, and allow people to maybe this is the second one, is the taking away the barrier to entry for education. Because it's not only is it outrageous, more people want to be in an education system than ever, but it's untenable for a lot of people, and it's debilitating once they've gotten through it. And then we don't give people any flexibility to make changes. You have to do something until it burns you out. I was telling someone earlier today that the only time I've not been at work in the last, how old am I? 17 years would be to go to the hospital. Or to jail. And that is not acceptable.
Those aren't vacations.
They were not vacations. And then I did have a spell of unemployment where I was working odd jobs, but I was still working odd jobs, contract jobs. I was watching, and basically there was a woman, and she was in marketing, and it was very difficult, and so they paid a stipend while she figured out what she wanted to do, and now she's going back to school, and she gets a student stipend in addition to the school being paid. That's in Finland. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then I would also really like to see a radical shift in the way that I guess healthcare is obviously something that people are looking to change, but specifically disability. I see that like what your mom had to go through, no one should have to go through that. She should never have had to, because the barriers that the country, because she still worked, was she still working a lot of the time?
She wasn't really able, because she was a phlebotomist before that. So when her hand is like numb, even though it's pain. So it's very difficult to find a vein when you have a numb hand. She was still working a little bit, and I think she was working in a retirement home because it was a little bit easier. Until someone tried to bite her. I think that was like, okay, I think I need to stop this.
She's like, I'm already in pain. You don't need to bite me. Get out here.
Yeah. No, but I think a lot of times she just couldn't. The real problem for her was not so much that as the way the workers' comp, because she fell in a hospital because there's an ice machine spitting out ice. It was broken, and they thought it was fixed, so they took away the wet floor sign, and she slipped and hit her head on like the door frame. So that's what caused it. And so the workers' comp was drug out for such a long time, and it's an excruciating process, like
horrible,
a decade plus to get anything, and you're just they literally design it to wear you out until you give up and just accept whatever pittance.
Disability also, because one of my dearest friends has two of my dearest friends have cerebral palsy, but one of them has it, and they can't. It's full-time job to live. So, but in order to get that like assistance and to get that sort of intervention, years. And what is this person to do? Just beg other people, and at this point their mom had died, and they ended up forced to live with family that were not as appreciative of this person. And it was just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. So yeah, I would love to see, because too, with the workers' comp, given what your mom was going through, she shouldn't have had disability. Should have been like, oh my God, please, here is something for you to live.
Yeah.
And when people don't have resources, they can't make decisions.
I feel like one of the problems that comes up that really would just, if we can just solve this one thing, and that's that no one should be in survival mode. If we can just get people out of that, you can think clearly, you can get yourself into better situations.
Yes.
But when you're in survival mode, what can you do? Like, you're just trying to find food.
Yes.
You're going to make poor choices.
Yes. The thing I think of internationally, the charity that is most dear to my heart is charities that provide like drinking water, because that's one of those things where it's like the fact that like 1 in 6 people doesn't have access to clean drink. It's mind-blowing when you think of things on a global scale, that if we could make that change, we could start, because we need everyone. Like, we need every person on this world. I know that disease and death and things like that happen, but to survive, this planet needs its occupants. And to just toss some people by the wayside because they were born in a location that doesn't have those resources is heartbreaking. So I think, like you said, survival mode, not even having just enough. One of the things that I saw recently that disturbed me was that some of the nationalist conversation is that progressives and liberals are trying to turn the planet into one world governance, and that takes away their identity as an American and all of these various things. My thought is that we are at a place in time where technology has advanced to a point and resource production has advanced to a point that the thing that you mentioned, where people all have enough to survive, that is 1,000% possible. Not 100, 1,000% possible. And for that not to be something that we prioritize just as like human beings because we want to preserve our identity and too bad. Enjoy your cholera. That's
Enjoy
just
your cholera.
completely unacceptable. I don't think that's about having a world order. I think that's just having like a human decency.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want a world order. I want enough sensible people that we don't really need that much governing.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be something?
But
we could all be homeschooled.
yay! What was it? Jesus sword. Jesus.
The sword of the Bible. Just beating me with the sword of the Bible.
What is this?
And this kid got beat because I told his mom. I said, he just beat me with his sword. And she said, did he just beat you with the word of the Lord? And that is not what this was.
You know,
they were Baptist. It's weird that I know that.
But what's so funny is I loved swords as a kid, like a lot. Like
You did?
A lot. And they all got taken away inevitably every single time I got one. Probably for hitting people.
Do you have a lightsaber though?
I did at one point. I mean,
Jealous.
how can you not? It's a lightsaber.
It was so important to me as a kid. I can't overstate how the importance of Star Wars.
But I was very disappointed because they were the kind where you go shh and it slides out.
Don't like it.
It's cool and all, but
No,
like,
it's not a lightsaber.
what is
You need to have the fuzzy glow experience. I still think, I have some friends who have some very expensive lightsabers, and I'm going to say they still don't cut it. For me.
But I mean, like, even that, because most of them, it's just like a long glass tube that does the thing. And I'm like,
I want the thing.
do the thing. I want to be able to attach it here and then walk.
That's going to happen before we die. I don't know if any of the good stuff will, but we'll have
There'll at least be a Death Star.
Lucasfilm will. It's Disney's in control. They'll find a way to lightsaber, okay?
Oh, God.
That's depressing. Yeah.
I would like to ask, if you're comfortable sharing,
Yeah.
your your tattoo.
Oh yeah,
Would you like to
it's
share?
just for suicide stuff. As I mentioned, I was depressed many times, and these are covering the burn marks on my hands from my most recent suicide attempt, which is now 10 years ago this year, which is really nice because I'm medicated and I don't even want to do the things I used to do, which is, if people say that mental health can't be treated, they are wrong. In
case you're listening, what is it?
This? Oh, what is it? So, this is a semicolon. So it is for where your sentence could have taken a full stop. You could have put a period, but you chose to go on.
Okay.
Which is nice. I mean, not like I chose. I mean, I'm just... but you go on. And I think that's important because you hit a lot of moments in your life where you're like, this is it. Full stop. I cannot. But it's actually this. So that's special. It's good to help. A lot of people just think that I'm like a literary snob, which I'm fine with too. I'm like, you don't need to know my business. I'm very fine with that though. I'm really not shy about things like suicide and all of that. It's everything is something that you put on and take off a lot of things in your life. And something like suicide obviously has very grave repercussions, but when you're going into that place, there's not really as much agency as people think there is, because you're just really so badly depressed. Or what often happens, people don't know this, you're so depressed and then you come out of it and you finally have the energy to do what you've been obsessing over. That but it's I don't think it's uncommon. I was listening the other day to some guy had won the lottery, and a few years later he committed suicide. I think that sometimes when you go through a lot of extreme changes, especially in terms of the way society views you, it's something that it's a vulnerability. So there's a lot of life to live, and sometimes living is very difficult. So,
is it because it was anyway a problem before, and because of the pandemic, it's become a very extreme problem of suicide.
Oh yes,
and particularly in the last few decades, the rise in small children committing suicide has just been astronomical. So, as someone who suffered through this kind of depression and these kind of things, what do you feel would be helpful? What needs to be done? How can we make this better for children? And adults, of course. But
my husband is a childhood survivor of suicide, so it is crazy how young that it can start. I think that the first thing would be that we have a very, very, very overdeveloped medical industrial complex with very, very little in the way of mental health. So for him, he got a therapist. For me, I already had a therapist, but I needed medication. Those sorts of things are just anathema when you live in a world where you won't even encounter that. You won't see that as a possibility. You don't see people getting better. The conversation around mental health is often veiled still because the stigma exists in that people are becoming more accepting of it being a health issue, but a lot of people see choice in it. And it's interesting when you see choice in something that children are going through. I know it's specifically the highest rise has been in young girls that are Black before the age of 12. I would say...
What do you think can be in their experience to push them to that point?
Oh, I think there are so many things, but a feeling that truly your life will never be better. Coming to a sense, that is something on all of us as society to cure, because we've treated Black women, female identified Black people, just with complete inconsideration throughout history, and I mean even today, the level of respect. So I would say what needs to happen, rather than what needs to happen, the things that happen are you don't feel committed to life. You feel committed to death for your own peace.
So it's just looking for the escape from this whatever situation.
It can be a situation, and multiple things can cause suicidality, which is interesting. Emil Durkheim did a study on suicide, and one of the things that was studied was why people committed suicide. The theory was that people will become suicidal if they aren't religious at the time. So they took this. They thought that if people don't have God, they thought that if people have God, they are not suicidal, and if they don't, they'll kill themselves. So that was the theory when they were taking tests. What they found was that whether you were very religious or very not religious, both extremes could result in suicidality. The same thing in terms of like if you were overly conventional, you were by the book, you were holding yourself to this ridiculous standard, or you were way out there and totally in your own world, both ended up being indications. So I think for people who are living at the edges of identities that are disenfranchised, you just, where do you belong?
What to do?
What to do. And honestly, as a person, during my dances with death, my dream was stability. I had no stability. I thought death takes everyone, and it is completely not, what is the right word? Death takes all. So it doesn't matter who you are. It sees no class. It sees no, for me, it didn't care about my appearance. It was just all consuming. And that piece was so attractive to me.
And that it was unbiased?
Yeah. The lack of bias was very attractive. And so for me, when I see like people living in situations where they are made to feel so hopeless and given so few resources, the craving for death isn't strange to me at all. What's sad to me is that a lot of times I think people crave an easy solution like boop them in the nose 3 times and then just turn them around and they'll want to live forever. That is not...
If only that worked.
If only that worked. It is so hard on communities to put that pressure on a community. We need better resources as a society. So yeah, that's what I think. And for people who are living on the fringes, which we've been witnessing fringes that like the outrage that's been happening politically in terms of the Capitol being what is word? The siege. The people that are doing this are not good. Like, they're not in a good place. I don't like what they stand for. I don't like what they think, but they think it to an extent that they're unwell. So I think a lot of those people, I mean, that head of police, was it a head of police or an officer that killed themselves after the Capitol was rampant? Because honestly, people get to a point where,
what do you do?
What do you do?
Yeah. And
I don't think it would be coming from a generous heart for me to say, I want to see these children whose only crime was being born into a society that doesn't regard them with enough love. I wouldn't be coming from a good heart if I didn't say people who have developed these series of like mind-blowingly inconsistent, outrageous expectations for society, they're still feeling feelings that are complete alienation. I don't want to see them reified or any of their views, but they do need help. Yeah.
One of the greatest pieces of advice when it comes to stuff like that I've heard is you don't condemn the person, you condemn the action.
Yeah.
You never condemn the person, because It's a person.
My mother always said, hate the sin, love the sinner. That was her thing.
I mean, yeah, but like...
And it becomes difficult. I mean, it sure is hard.
It's not easy.
Especially when you're like, oh, little girls of color are dying because they don't fit in this world. And you're out here waving your Confederate flag at the Capitol. It's hard to see the pains, that there are pains that are being felt that could be shared by one so, you know, so blameless. And then one person who you're like, you've lived your life. Why are you here? But... again, like you said, me as a person who I have gone through lots of different understandings in my life, I hope that I won't be judged by the public for my least wonderful moments and views that I've had to work through. I certainly wouldn't want to judge someone who is in the process of becoming, because like I said, that the ex of mine who was misogynistic, had some toxic masculine things, and was very conservative. Now this person is completely on a different side and wants to see the world, people given a chance, and a world that's more generous to all the citizens. So things can change.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear I think you'll like this. Have you ever heard the Oscar Wilde quote? I say it way too much, but I really, really love it. Where he says, now I'm going to say it incorrectly because I think every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So it's like...
Fair enough.
That's beautiful. And that is true. You can't pause a story and...
Yeah. Well, and I've found too, for myself, the more I understand about myself, the more I recognize in people. Like, for example, let's say you have somebody that you're feeling a lot of anger or frustration, or they're like your enemy, right?
Yeah.
The more you understand your enemy, the less you're capable of them being an enemy for you.
Yeah.
They may still have whatever, that's their thing. But for you, like, if you genuinely, truly understand them, then the only thing left is really having compassion. That doesn't mean you have to be nice. It just means you have to love them because you understand them.
Yes.
But it takes a lot of love to have tough love for somebody else.
Yes. Oh, yes, it does. I'm just thinking in my sibling world now. But then I think that's the nice thing about being related to people who are sometimes confounding, is that you have this love for them even when you're like, oh, what? Like, what are you doing? Like, what did you just say? Like, just... My sister, the one that's closest in age to me, like, I was all feelings and sensitive and spend time with others, and she became like a hyper materialist who was really inflammatory with others, and somehow we're close now again but she came back around, but it was always my challenge, like when she was behaving in a way that I was just the opposite of my own core values, to find that love for her. So it's, I think that's a special thing to be able to find that, because, or else that's always someone outside of your understanding, and it becomes scary.
Well, I like to end these on a lighter note. So
great.
What is in the works? What is Andi's life going forward? What do you want to do? What do you want your life to be?
Oh, there's so many things. Can I ask you what your favorite animal is first? It's important to me right now. If you could hang out with any animal right now, pick your animal. A hangout animal.
This is very funny to me because it wouldn't have been my choice at any point in my life. But I grew up in a farm. Like, not grew up, but like I spent my summers at my grandfather's farm. So I've had the experience of like feeding a baby calf and stuff, which is very beautiful. But I would have never said a cow. Like, those cows were very skittish, and probably because of the way my grandfather was. And they're just not like warm. They're just eating and trying to do what they need to do and avoid you at the same time. But when I went to India, the ashram we were in, those cows, the baby ones, were like dogs. The way they were bouncing and playing, and they come up to you and they want you to feed them, and they're like licking and all this. Like,
they're friendly.
They're amazing.
Oh.
And they have so much life in them. And I don't know if I can pick one animal, but that was definitely something that was a beautiful experience. So specifically ashram calf. Yeah, because it's not just that. They're country cows, which are actually distinctly different than the more like Western cows you see. They have the big like hump in the back.
Are these the ones they turn into leather?
I don't know.
Are they a dark color?
They're all different colors.
Oh, okay.
But
because I learned about that. Because but I'm glad these cows are living a free life, aren't they? Are they?
Well,
oh no.
They're cows in India is very interesting to me because you think, oh, sacred cow. But we went on a trip to Rishikesh, which is in North India, and this is supposed to be like one of the yoga capitals of the world. But there's like so many cows that are like, they're like vagrants. They're like homeless people. They just walk the streets, and every time I would walk by, I would just kind of pet one, and you could see it was like starving for love. It would just be like, like it just wanted you to love it.
Love to be loved?
Yeah, because everyone's like shoos them away, you know, like get out of here, stop eating my... Because they're literally like...
I want to get a house there only to be nice to the cows. Is that weird? I want to get a barn there.
A barn?
I do. I want to get a barn there.
Well, there's some people, like Shroff knew this guy who's... He had a little farm that he made, and he had a name for each and every one of the cows, and the way he treated them was like... they're like... heaven. I don't know. It was just
because it's a family member. It's a pet.
Exactly. It was very beautiful.
I hope animals get that level of dignity one day. I know that's just.
But it's not everywhere. Like
no.
Unfortunately, even in India, there's a lot of times when the cows cease to be useful for milk or whatever, and they're just kind of like off you go in the street, and so they're just everywhere. They're ballsy. They just lay in the road. They're like, what? I'm not moving. It's all the cars are like,
you
okay.
did this to me, Stan.
But anyway, that ashram cow, as well as probably the peacocks, are pretty cool.
I
they're
love
just like
that.
running around everywhere.
They just run around in India everywhere.
Well, in the ashram particularly, they're there.
Oh,
so we actually
they make loud noises.
They do, and we had a friend in our teacher training whose name was Keyur, and people gave him a hard time. They're like, because his name, it sounds a little bit like how the peacock's call is. So we'd like have the buses going by, and people be like, Keyur, Keyur. And he's such a crazy little kid. I love him so much.
That's so good.
But,
peacocks are fabulous. They're in my top 10 for sure. I hung out with some this year.
Yeah.
In Florida, they have outdoor areas where you can like drive and see animals, but the animals just get to live their lives. Like it's not like feed this animal. It's crazy. There's one place that's like that that's in Georgia, but you feed the animals like pellets and they come up and they're like, oh, like,
give me a pellet.
Their tongue, they stick their tongue that they know you're just gonna shoot it in. So they're like, oh, and you're like, and you can smell on their breath. It's like that you've eaten something like that before. No, it smells like the animal. So you're like, oh, that's bison. I'm ashamed. Ted Turner, how dare you get me to eat bison before. You can smell that you've eaten it. Like I've smelled it on my food, like in a faint. So, and I've eaten some things that for my high crimes could be. That's a movie I want to make one day. But right now, I would love to. I just want to be with the manatees. I want to be with a manatee.
I want to see them. I've only seen them in like the books on ecology in school, and we learn about that. But I've never seen the actual manatees.
They look like me, but they're in the water. They do. They might have more of a facial hair situation, but they just kind of look like a gray turd, and they're just floating, trying to live their lives. Right now, I'm really into fat vegetarian animals. They are my favorite. I used to be offended when our mutual friend Christopher would call me a rhino, and now I'm like, that's pretty dope. I'm a rhino. Rhinos are... Have you seen what that ass looks like? And those eat grass all day. That's like a tank that runs on corn oil. That is amazing. I want that. So I love big vegetarians right now. I think they're golden. I think they're gorgeous.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of what you asked before, what I'm doing, I'm going to take some time to undo for a while.
Okay.
I am undoing. My big goals are I still want to direct and produce. That gives me such joy. And I think it's almost passé to say that you want to direct and produce things that get people to think. Like the movie Parasite is a good example of something that gets people to think. But I don't know why you would go into something that's difficult to get into if you didn't want to get people to think. So I think it'll probably start with me because I'm me, and for the first time in my life, I think in life, people think you go round and round and do the same thing. I think it's like a screw, so you're like going up, so you meet the same moment, but from a different vantage point. So I'm in such a great point right now in my life where I'll get to make some new decisions, and I want to figure out where I can provide, through my experience, the best value for others. Because some things are hard. Like, I know the semicolon tattoo subject is not a lighter note, but it's that kind of stuff people really need to talk about. But I'm not a professional. I'm only somebody who's experienced that. So trying to figure out what I can give that is the most needed to people. In short, entertaining bursts. And but the undoing process is just that I've caught up. I'm not in a place where it's a moment that I've seen you in before, where it's like you're like, I'm to the point where financially I can make a new decision, and I can do something that's daring for myself. And I think those are the best. You know, you said earlier the moment of growth. I think those moments really allow you. I hope that my best moment of growth, it doesn't end with me dumping my poor fiance. I think there's a lot of growth ahead. I don't want to nudge myself into anxiety by thinking about it too much.
Are there any, like, what would be something which is perhaps easy to others, but for you it's a big challenge that you'd like to accomplish?
Easy for others, but a challenge.
It doesn't have to be easy for others or not, but like, what's the big challenge for you going forward?
The big challenge for me is to live. The things that other people take for granted, like I'm going to get up, I'm going to put on clothes, I'm going to start my day, or I'm going to unwind. I don't know what those things feel like.
Unwinding?
For me. Huh?
Unwinding? I
don't know how to do those things. I'm married to someone who is just so good at, like, now I have time, I'm going to do the thing. So, I mean, sometimes he complains and he's like, oh, I'm boring myself today. I'm like, oh, well, I can help you with that. But I don't, after I lost a lot of things 4 years ago, maybe long before that, I really haven't paid attention to what I like. I don't know what I like. If I were 8 years old, I could tell you, give me 5 minutes. I could tell you more about what I like than you would ever want to hear. You'd be like, oh God, okay, white tigers. You want to be a gymnast. Very unlikely. Gravity doesn't look like it's kind to you. Which isn't fat phobic. It was just the truth. I was fabulous. I was holding up Earth really well with all of my girth. But I really kind of want to know, what I want to know who I am at this, where I meet myself right now. And I look forward to that. And I want to know that beyond the things I know I like about myself. Like, I like the things I can create. I like my relationships with my friends. I love my family. But I want to know me on a separate level where I can just, what is the way to say it? I want to be able to meet my current moment with acceptance. And that's hard. I think that's a mental health thing. I think that's something that both of you have learned and focused on, and is is a practice that's very challenging, especially as a person who used to have religion. Some of the other things like meditation, yoga, all of these things, there's a tinge of not only doubt, but like I don't feel safe. Like, I think that it's part of the...
Really?
Mm-hmm. I not only have the skeptic to protect my once vulnerable, faithful heart, but I also have the fear of falling into another situation where I'm once again removed from the rest of the world, and I am not able to be in touch with where people are and what they need. And so that gives me like tremendous apprehension. So I want to work through that, because I think there's a balance that I haven't struck there, because I think through those moments of just being, like, I love a lot of the Taoist learnings were really special to me after I was coming out of religion, and being able to sit with what the way that I would put it is, and it aligns with humor, being able to accept all that is with a sweetness is very important to me. And I'm not there yet.
Well, that's definitely an important part of yoga. It's like, Shrav was just saying this the other day when she first went to the ashram. She was volunteering for some program, because that's how it works. Everything's volunteer based. So she's in some program, and they have a plant that's very common in India called neem. Anybody who's focused on like medicinal plants and stuff would probably have heard of it. It's one of the most medicinal plants on the planet. It's a tree, and the leaves are good for so many things, but they're also very bitter. They're they don't taste good. They just don't. And one thing they do, but it helps with the digestive tract in so many different aspects. So when you're on this like yogic spiritual thing, what they do in the ashram is they provide little balls of neem. They've grounded the leaves and made into a little ball. And you take that in the morning before you do your practices. It helps with a whole bunch of things.
Do you just swallow it, or do you have to chew it?
Get it down. It's better to chew because it starts the digestive process and breaks it up and stuff. But it's still going to benefit you even if you just drop it in the back of your throat. Like my mom tried it and she literally threw it. So she chops it in little bits and takes it. But anyway,
your mom's so great.
Because it's like that, Shrav was saying, she saw this other woman who was very beautiful and just taking it and smiling. And she's like, how are you smiling? And she's like, isn't it gross? She's like, yeah, I hate it, but I can either smile or not. Like, it was that simple.
Yes.
And this concept is really everything, because the way we kind of look at it, like what they're trying to get you to understand in the ashram is your life is just a series of things that are happening, but there's no one else inside of you except for you. So I know it's very like, a lot of people don't like hearing like, just be happy. It's not about just be happy. It's like, it's your choice. It really is. And maybe it's difficult to get through that right now for so many reasons. But when it comes down to it, if you're the only person inside of you, then you can choose to be happy about and deal with whatever you're doing joyfully. Well,
and I think there's something to be said for acceptance, because I think that America has a toxic relationship with positivity, where they're like, smile through, come on, where's your smile? I think that there is a beauty, though, in accepting all of what something is, like, and to take that with a joy. That's really something special,
Yeah. Like, you can even have something sorrowful or painful happen. It can happen. Yeah. You can still go through it graciously.
Oh, I know that for the losses that I had, so losing that best friend that I mentioned, that's our mutual friend, Christopher, just to no longer being friends, and then the loss of my grandfather. Oh, I never ever in my life understood better that I hated when people would be like, don't cry because it's gone. Smile because it happened. It's like, ew. But I'm so happy. Like, I am so happy that I got to spend, when you feel the immenseness of something that is and was loved leaving, you have to think about what it was for you when it was present. And why focus on absence when you can think about the joy of what was there? I mean, mourning is important. I don't think that I'm necessarily excellent at it, but it's nice that in the aftermath of it, you can say, oh my gosh, like how worth it to mourn something I loved so much. How worth it to have been close to someone so incredibly special. So I want to feel that way about me. So not in an egotistical manner, but also, you know why that lady smiled? Just to say she already took her name. She was smiling because it was, oh, yes. Please.
Okay, fine.
Everybody's like, how are you? She didn't smile before. She was walking up like, yes. She said, yes, it's done.
Oh, God. Before we wrap it up, is there anything you would like to plug or
yeah, you should watch this podcast. You should listen to it.
No.
You should love it.
But don't you work with a nonprofit?
Oh, yeah. If you would, I work with the Performing Arts Conservatory of Atlanta, which provides vocal scholarships to underserved kids who are talented but don't have the means to be working with formal teachers. And the students do so well. It's such a joy of my life. So PACA, it's called, or just Google this. Google Performing Arts Conservatory of Atlanta. So.
Okay, well, we'll link to it in the description.
Oh, that's nice. Should update the website.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll do something someday, but I'll just pop into the podcast when I do. Just be like, hey guys,
we did a thing. Are there any thoughts you'd like to leave on? Oh,
I just hope that whoever's listening is smiling for and is in a place where life is being kind. And if you're not, I hope you're lucky enough that next roll of the die you get it. So that's all. I don't really, not to be brain dead, but in a time, not that there's anything wrong with being brain dead, but in a time such as this, it's just such an honor to be listened to. So
fantastic. Andy,
high five! Jump, freeze frame.
Well, Andy, I love you to death. Thank you so much for coming on. That means a lot.
Love you, Shop was behind the camera. I feel so guilty. You're not saying anything. It's fine. She'll have one. Does she have a podcast yet?
I'm probably gonna figure out how to do that with someone else because I just know her, so it's like,
yeah,
it'd be a lot better for someone else to interview her, I feel.
Or else it'll just be the two of you. That makes sense.
Yeah, but what I'd like to do is we'll get a situation soon where there's another microphone that you can have, so it's a group conversation. It's just that right now it's kind of difficult with the setup, but we'll fix this.
Oh, it's already wonderful. He's always ready to. We'll fix it.
Okay. Well, anyways, that's all, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I'll link all that in the description below. This is Andy. She's lovely, and we're out.
Peace.